I hadn't set foot in that house for exactly 10 years. 10 years since the night they drove me out. My husband, my children, and their silence. 10 years since my name was erased from the brass plate by the gate. 10 years since I stopped being Eleanor Langley, wife and mother, and became something simpler, a scandal. But tonight the gates would open again. Not for them, for me. The letter went out 2 weeks ago. Simple, elegant, on heavy cream stationery, the kind that smells faintly of old wealth and distance. 12 envelopes, 12 names, each sealed with black wax, stamped with the Langley crest they had all forgotten I still owned. Dinner Friday, 7 o'clock. Formal. Attendance required. EL. No apology. No explanation. Just the kind of tone they once used with me. By Monday, I knew they'd all received it. By Wednesday, the whispers began. My son called his sister. My daughter called her lawyer. The lawyer called my old friend from the club. And by Thursday, I could feel their fear humming through the city like an electric current. Good. It meant they remembered. I spent the morning of that Friday alone in the kitchen of my new house, the one overlooking the river, glass walls, quiet enough to hear myself think. 10 years had given me new habits, silence, precision, and control. I'd built them the way other people build fortunes, brick by brick, lie by lie. My reflection in the glass looked older but sharper, the softness gone, replaced by something they wouldn't recognize, certainty. They had taken everything from me once, the company, the house, even the right to use my name. But I learned the language of power while they were still speaking the dialect of fear. And when the time came, I bought it all back, quietly, legally, elegantly, including the house, especially the house. At 6 o'clock, I stood before the mirror in my dressing room. Black silk dress, long sleeves, a single diamond pin. No perfume. The scent of memory was enough. I brushed my hair once, twice, and stopped when I saw what I wanted in my eyes. Composure that didn't need forgiveness. Outside, the car waited. A driver I'd hired from London, discreet, loyal, uninterested in gossip. He opened the door and I slid in, watching the city dissolve into glass and light as we drove north. New York in early spring has a way of pretending it's still winter. The air was cold enough to bite, the sky bruised and indecisive. By the time we turned onto Langley Road, the world had gone silver. The kind of evening where secrets travel better than sound. The house appeared the way old ghosts do, suddenly and completely. Stone, ivy, and arrogance. The same iron gates, newly painted, still bearing the initials LH, Langley Holdings, my husband's empire, my husband's pride, my husband's lie. I told the driver to wait by the road. I'll call when I'm ready. He nodded. Understood, madam. The gravel crunched beneath my heels. The same sound that once meant home, now a prelude to war. Through the tall windows, I saw lights, movement, silhouettes. They had all come, every one of them. I entered without knocking. My key still fit. The air smelled of polished wood, expensive wine, and tension. For a moment, I simply stood in the foyer, letting the house recognize me again. Every portrait, every vase, every mirror had been rearranged, as if they'd been trying to erase my shape from its memory. But you can't erase the architect of a life. You can only rearrange the furniture. It rusted into house, Mother? The voice came from the staircase. My daughter, Victoria. Perfect posture, perfect makeup, a dress that looked expensive but not kind. Her expression faltered between disbelief and discomfort. You're early, she said. I built this house, I replied. I can arrive when I please. She hesitated, then forced a smile. You look well. Better than the last time you saw me, I imagine. She didn't answer. Behind her, another figure appeared. My eldest, Charles. Still tall, still pretending confidence. He'd inherited his father's charm, and regrettably, his cowardice. Mother, he said, voice smooth as glass. You sent an interesting invitation. I smiled. I thought you might enjoy an evening of honesty. It's so rare in this family. His jaw tightened. If this is about the past, it always is, darling, I said. That's what family means. The past we never escape. Ich rannte for a seat. In the dining room, the table gleamed beneath the chandelier. 12 seats, perfectly set. Silver polished reflection, crystal glasses like little cages of light. A fire burned in the marble hearth, the same one I'd chosen 25 years ago. Even the scent of rosemary in the air was familiar. Every detail had been restored to the night before it all fell apart. And one by one, they arrived. My sister-in-law, still overdressed and underloved. My late husband's business partner, face bloated with guilt and bourbon. My youngest, Daniel, the one who'd testified against me, trembling behind his father's shadow. 12 of them, 12 ghosts, all pretending to be human. When I entered, the room went quiet. The silence that follows a scandal never fades. It just learns new manners. I took my seat at the head of the table. The chair creaked like a confession. Thank you for coming, I said. No one spoke. Charles cleared his throat. Mother, before we begin, we already have, I interrupted. Dinner is served. At my signal, the doors opened. 2 servers entered, not staff from the house, but professionals I'd hired. They wore black gloves and carried silver trays with precision. The first dish was placed before them. Oysters on ice. I saw the flicker in Charles's eyes. He remembered. It was his father's favorite. The dish we served the night before the investigation began. How nostalgic, I said lightly. Don't you agree, Charles? He didn't answer. Victoria reached for her wine. Mother, what exactly is this dinner about? I looked at her. Her voice had that careful, trembling confidence of a woman who suspects she's no longer the most powerful person in the room. It's about truth, I said, and closure. My son laughed, brittle, nervous. You always did love theatrics. No, I said softly. Your father did. I preferred results. The second course arrived. Duck à l'orange, crisp skin, rich glaze, orange zest. The same dish we served at our anniversary, the night before he moved his accounts offshore. They didn't eat. Neither did I. As the night deepened, the air grew heavier. The house itself seemed to remember what was coming. Every whisper, every glance, every unfinished word from 10 years ago floated up from the walls like smoke. I let them sit in silence. Let them taste their own fear. Why now? Victoria finally asked. Because 10 years is long enough to let a lie ripen, I said. And this one has aged beautifully. When the third course arrived, roast lamb with rosemary, I saw my youngest hands shake. It was the dish I used to make for him as a boy, every Sunday, before he told the court I'd falsified the company's reports. He looked at me now with the same guilt he'd carried since that day. I met his eyes and smiled. "Eat," I said. "You must be hungry after all these years." He didn't move. As the plates were cleared, I stood. I walked slowly around the table, trailing my hand along the backs of the chairs, each touch deliberate, almost tender. "Do you know what the most dangerous thing in the world is?" I asked. No one answered. "Memory." I paused behind Charles. "Especially when it belongs to a woman who has nothing left to lose." He flinched and I smiled. "Don't worry, darling. I'm not here to destroy you. You've all done that beautifully yourselves." I returned to my seat, lifting my glass. "To family," I said, "the one thing money can't buy and time can't repair." The crystal rang like a bell, but no one joined in. Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon, quiet, restrained, dignified, like applause from God himself. The butler approached. "Madam, shall I serve dessert?" "Not yet," I said. "We still have something to discuss." I looked around the table, one face at a time. 10 years ago, you all watched as your father accused me of fraud. You let them take everything. My reputation, my freedom, my children. I forgave you because I thought silence would keep me safe. I set my glass down. It didn't. Silence is just another kind of prison. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The calm was more dangerous than any scream. "I invited you tonight because the estate you think you own, the company you think you control, has been mine again for 3 years. You've been living on my inheritance, my patience, and my mercy." The room froze. Charles went pale. Victoria whispered, "That's impossible." I smiled. "You should know better than anyone. Nothing is impossible when a Langley wants revenge." The clock struck 8. The lights flickered. Somewhere in the distance, a storm began to break. I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands, and said the words I'd rehearsed for 10 years. "Dinner has only begun. Dessert will be served when the truth is finished. When you've lived long enough among the powerful, you learn that silence is rarely empty. It's negotiation. It's strategy. It's a weapon. And tonight, silence was all I needed." The storm outside grew louder, pressing against the windows like a restless conscience. Inside, the room glowed gold and warm. Deceptive comfort, like the smile of a liar. I could feel their eyes on me. Confusion, anger, fear. A cocktail I'd been served many times before. Only now, I was the one holding the glass. Charles leaned forward. "You expect us to believe this?" I sipped my wine. "I don't expect anything, Charles. Expectation is for the powerless." His jaw clenched. "The company was left to father." "Correction," I said. "It was transferred to your father after I signed those documents you brought me while I was in the hospital. Do you remember that day?" He froze. Good. Guilt is the most honest language a liar speaks. "Senri." The others shifted in their seats. My sister-in-law coughed softly. Victoria's hand trembled against her glass. "You can't prove that," Charles said finally. "I don't need to," I replied. "The proof is already in your bank account. You've been drawing dividends from a shell company registered under my name. You might want to check the signature next time. Victoria spoke up, her voice sharp. What do you want from us, Mother? I smiled, the kind of smile that costs nothing but makes people pay everything. Dinner, I said simply, and honesty. That's it. The waiter refilled their glasses. None of them drank. I continued, calm and slow, the way you talk to children who are about to touch something dangerous. 10 years ago, your father built an empire from money that didn't exist. And when the walls began to crack, he needed someone to fall with dignity. And you volunteered, Charles said. No, I said. I was chosen, like a lamb, tender, trusting, well-seasoned. Victoria frowned. You're implying, Father. I'm not implying anything, I interrupted. I'm confessing what you already know. Her silence was an admission, the kind that trembles just before it breaks. The fourth course arrived. Black truffle risotto, my favorite. The one he used to order for me every anniversary, right before his mistress would call. I could smell the truffle before the plate touched the table, rich, earthy, intoxicating. Funny how betrayal always smells expensive. I let them eat this one. I wanted to see who could still pretend. Charles didn't touch his. Victoria tried a bite, her fork shaking slightly. Daniel stared at the plate like it might accuse him. And then, from the far end of the table, someone laughed. It was Margaret, my husband's sister. The one who always played the victim but never missed a will reading. You've really gone mad, haven't you? She said, her voice sharp with gin and years of envy, dragging us all here for one of your performances. I tilted my head. Performance? Yes, she sneered. The fallen queen pretending to be relevant again. You should have stayed hidden. The room stiffened. No one dared breathe. I stood slowly, walked to her side. When I spoke, my voice was soft enough to make her flinch. Do you remember the cottage in Maine? Her face went white. What? The summer before my trial, you came to visit. You told me how sorry you were, and you asked if I'd mind signing a few papers to simplify the estate. You signed your name over mine, I said, placing a hand on her shoulder. And now you live off the house I built, the same house that's now under my name again? She froze. I smiled faintly. You're welcome to keep it until the end of the month. I'm not cruel. The others stared at me, part fear, part fascination. People love destruction when they're not the ones being burned. I returned to my seat, the heels of my shoes tapping softly against the marble. Each step a heartbeat, each heartbeat a countdown. Victoria leaned forward. Why are you doing this, Mother? Because I want you to understand what inheritance really means, I said. It's not just money. It's the weight of everything we've done to survive. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. And what if we didn't survive? I looked at him. Then you learn to haunt the living, I said. Thunder shook the glass. The candles flickered, and for a second, every face looked like a painting. Still, haunted, guilty. I lifted my glass again. To the ghosts, I said, the only honest company we ever keep. That's when the lights went out. A scream, brief, human, terrified, cut through the dark. Then the sound of something shattering, glass maybe, or certainty. The generator kicked in, bathing the room in the dim amber light. Victoria's chair was empty. Panic fluttered like birds in a cage. "Where is she?" Charles demanded. No one answered. Then from the hallway came the sound of heels, slow, deliberate, echoing against the marble. Victoria appeared in the doorway, pale, trembling, holding something in her hand. A letter, unsealed, old. "I found this," she whispered, "in Father's study." Her voice cracked. "It's addressed to you, Mother." I took it from her, slowly, carefully, the way you handle a bomb. The handwriting was unmistakable. His. The envelope smelled faintly of tobacco and guilt. I unfolded the paper. The words were faded, but the first line was clear enough to freeze the room. "Eleanor, if you're reading this, it means the truth found its way home before I could." Silence. Even the storm seemed to stop. Turikkoanasu. I kept reading. I never meant for it to end this way. The numbers weren't forged by you. They were mine. I thought I could fix it, but by the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late. The board wanted a scapegoat, and you were too loyal to see the trap. If I could undo one thing, it would be asking you to sign those papers. You trusted me, and I buried you with that trust. I don't deserve forgiveness, but if you ever find this, know that everything I left behind, the house, the shares, even the debts, still belongs to you. I only wish I'd had the courage to say it before the world did. When I finished, the paper trembled in my hand, not from weakness, but from memory. The weight of 10 years collapsed into silence. No one spoke. No one dared. Finally, I folded the letter and placed it beside my plate. "Dinner," I said quietly, "is now officially served." The thunder outside cracked like applause. In that sound, I heard something close to closure. But not yet. Not completely. They say truth sets you free. But I've learned that's only half the sentence. The truth sets you free. After it's finished burning everything else. And tonight, the fire had only just begun. The letter lay on the table like a corpse. Pale, still, undeniable. Even the ink seemed ashamed to exist. For 10 years, that paper had slept in silence while I carried the blame. Now it was awake, and so was I. I looked up. Every face around the table was different now. They weren't a family anymore. They were suspects. Charles was the first to speak. His voice cracked like glass. This doesn't change what happened." "Oh, it changes everything," I said. "You just haven't realized what you've lost yet." Victoria whispered, "He was dying when he wrote this." "Yes," I said. "And still he told the truth. Something none of you managed while you were alive and healthy." My words were quiet, but they carried the weight of a decade. Margaret crossed her arms, bitter and pale. "So you're innocent. Congratulations. You still ruined the family name." I turned to her. "No, dear. The family ruined itself. I just stopped cleaning up the mess." Her lips tightened, old arrogance pretending to be dignity. I rose from my seat and began to walk slowly around the table again. The room followed me. Eyes like knives, breaths like ghosts. It felt almost religious, this ritual of reckoning. When I stopped behind Charles, he tensed. "You were supposed to protect the company," I said. "But instead, you protected your father's lie. You called the lawyers, forged the narrative, and told the press I was unstable. His hands clenched. I was trying to save us. No, I said, voice like ice. You were trying to save yourself. And in doing so, you became him. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence was confession enough. Next, I turned to Daniel. He was trembling. Of all of them, he had been the most fragile, the easiest to shape, the quickest to break. You, I said softly. My youngest. My sweet boy who swore to tell the truth in court. And you did, almost. His eyes filled with tears. They made me, Mother. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, I said. Yours just had a price tag. He dropped his head, shoulders shaking. It wasn't remorse. It was the sound of a soul realizing too late that forgiveness is a luxury. Kista, I returned to my seat and placed the letter beside my glass. Your father wrote this to me, I said, but he didn't die with guilt. He died with relief, because he knew I'd do what he couldn't. Charles frowned. And what's that? Finish what he started. The waiter entered quietly, placing the next course, seared halibut with lemon butter and caviar, a dish my husband had loved to order when he wanted to impress his mistresses. How poetic, I murmured. A meal that looks pure but reeks of betrayal. No one touched it. You all think this is about revenge, I said, folding my napkin with precision. It isn't. Revenge is for people who still care. What I want is something rarer, clarity. Clarity? Margaret scoffed. You mean power? I met her gaze. Power is just clarity, without apology. For a moment, no one moved. The fire hissed softly in the hearth, the sound of luxury masking decay. I leaned back, studying each of them as if I were reading an obituary I'd written myself. Every person at that table had built a life out of what I lost. Status, comfort, pride. And now, they were watching it all dissolve in the reflection of my calm. Tai, can we? Victoria finally broke. You want us to beg? Is that it? I shook my head. No, dear. I want you to see. I gestured toward the letter. That's the truth your father left behind. You've all spent 10 years protecting a lie. Because it was profitable. Because guilt was inconvenient. Because compassion doesn't look good in silk. Her face flushed red. You think you're better than us? I think I survived what you couldn't even admit existed, I said. That's not superiority. That's evolution. The storm outside was roaring now, lightning cutting through the windows like flashbulbs. Every time it struck, their faces froze in harsh, cinematic light, pale, guilty, exposed. I poured more wine. The sound of it filled the silence like blood. Your father used to say wealth is about what you hide, I said, but I disagree. Wealth is about what you can finally afford to reveal. Daniel whispered, so what happens now? Now, I said, we eat dessert. The waiter entered with a silver tray, placing a single dish in front of each person. Golden sugar domes glistened under the chandelier. Beneath the sugar was something darker, bitter chocolate mousse. The sweetness, I said, is just the surface. Beneath it lies what we all become when we stop pretending. I lifted my spoon. They followed, some reluctantly, some trembling. Margaret refused. I smiled. Suit yourself. Truth was never your taste. When I tasted it, the bitterness spread slowly, elegantly, like an old memory resurfacing. And then I spoke. I've signed over everything. Their heads snapped up. The estate, the holdings, the stocks, all of it. Effective tomorrow, none of you own a cent of Langley property. Charles slammed his fist on the table. You can't do that. I already did, I said calmly. And unlike your father, I don't need forgiveness to feel clean. Victoria's voice shook. Why? Because I don't want to carry this legacy anymore, I said. Money built on lies doesn't multiply. It rots. I'm leaving it to the one person who never asked for it. Daniel stared. Who? I looked toward the doorway. A figure stood there, quiet, uncertain, dressed in the plain uniform of the staff. The housekeeper's daughter. The only one who'd ever stayed when everyone else left. Her name is Maria, I said softly. She took care of me when none of you would. Victoria's voice broke. You're giving everything to a stranger? I smiled faintly. No, I'm giving it to someone who knows the value of loyalty. The room erupted. Disbelief, rage, protest. I sat still, watching the chaos unfold like an orchestra that no longer needed a conductor. This was my finale. Their noise was the applause. When it finally quieted, I stood. You once called me weak, I said, because I stayed silent, because I forgave, because I chose peace over pride. I stepped away from the table, my voice lowering into something colder. But strength isn't in what you destroy. It's in what you can walk away from without flinching. I paused at the doorway. Behind me, the family I once built sat drowning in everything they thought they'd won. Enjoy what's left, I said. It's all borrowed time anyway. And then I walked out. The storm swallowed the house. The wind howled like a choir of ghosts. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt free. Not because I'd won, but because I no longer needed to. The house was quieter after I left the dining room, but silence in that place never meant peace. It was the kind of silence that hummed, like a piano string still trembling after the note fades. I walked through the corridor I'd once designed. White marble floors, oil paintings of ancestors who had mastered the art of looking noble while doing nothing noble. Each portrait seemed to watch me, as if waiting for me to turn into one of them. A woman who endured, not one who acted. But I had acted, and now the walls could taste it. I stopped at the end of the hall. From the dining room behind me came the sound of argument, sharp voices cutting through the air like broken glass. Charles first, always the loudest when he realized he'd lost control. You can't just take everything away, he shouted. Then Victoria, her tone icy and contained. She already did, Charles. Screaming won't bring it back. Margaret snapped something about betrayal. Daniel tried to speak and was drowned out by the thunder. They sounded like every board meeting I'd ever survived. But this time, I didn't have to sit through it. I made my way to the library, the one room in that mansion that still felt like mine. The fire was still burning in the hearth, casting long shadows across the shelves. I stood there for a long moment, watching the flames eat away at the wood, thinking how much destruction can look like beauty if you have the right lighting. On the mantel sat a single photograph. Our family, years ago, smiling in front of that same house, before everything collapsed under the weight of its own perfection. I picked it up. The faces looked younger, but even then, you could see the fractures, Charles's pride, Victoria's envy, Daniel's fear, and me. The glue trying to hold them all together. I placed the photo back and whispered, "Glue isn't meant to last forever." The library door opened. Daniel stood there, shoulders trembling, his face pale but determined. "Mother," he said softly. I didn't turn. "Do you hate me?" His voice cracked on the word hate, like a boy asking permission to cry. I looked at the fire. "No," I said. "Hate is too expensive. I spent it all years ago." He stepped closer. "I didn't mean to." "Yes, you did," I interrupted. "But you were afraid. Fear makes good people do cruel things. I thought if I testified, they'd forgive me." I smiled faintly. Forgiveness from cowards is the emptiest gift in the world. He sank into the armchair across from me. "I can't sleep," he whispered. "I keep seeing your face the day I lied." "Good," I said. "That means you still have a conscience." His eyes filled with tears. "I'm not asking you to forgive me." "I know," I said. "You're asking how to forgive yourself." He looked up, desperate. "How do I?" I took a breath. The fire popped, sending a spark up the chimney. "By doing something better with what's left," I said. "Regret is only useful if it changes the next sentence." He nodded, and for the first time in years, I saw the boy he used to be. The one who believed I could fix anything with a kiss and a story. But some stories aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to be finished. When he left, the house was silent again. But this time, it wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the ghosts, and I had finally stopped competing with them. I returned to the dining room. The others were gone. The plates were cold. Wine spilled like blood across the white linen. The letter still lay where I'd left it, half folded, waiting. I took it, slid it into my clutch, and stepped outside. The storm had ended. Rain glistened on the driveway like liquid glass. The air smelled of wet roses and endings. Gittisi. Charles was standing near the carport, a cigarette trembling between his fingers. He looked older, the kind of older that money can't hide. When he saw me, he tried to speak, but guilt dries the mouth faster than whiskey. "You've ruined everything," he said finally. I smiled. "No, Charles. I just rearranged it to its original design." He laughed bitterly. "You think you're better than us." "I think I learned faster," I said. "That's not superiority. It's survival." He took a step closer, eyes burning with a mix of fear and admiration. "You could have told me the truth. You could have saved us." "You weren't looking to be saved," I said. "You were looking to stay comfortable." His voice softened. "You sound like Father." I looked at him then, truly looked, and for the first time I saw it. The same weakness that destroyed the man I once loved. "No," I said. "I sound like the woman he should have listened to." He turned away, flicked his cigarette into the rain, and disappeared into the dark. The echo of his footsteps lingered like regret. When I reached the car, the driver opened the door without a word. I slid into the back seat, set the letter beside me, and closed my eyes. The mansion faded behind the tinted glass, its windows glowing faintly, like eyes that had finally learned how to weep. Halfway down the road, I asked the driver to stop. "Here, madam?" he asked. "Yes," I said. We were beside the old bridge that crossed the river. the same river where, 10 years ago, I'd stood with my husband the night before the scandal broke. He had promised me then that everything he did was for us, and I had believed him. That was my first mistake. I stepped out of the car, the wind lifting my hair, the scent of rain still heavy in the air. The city shimmered in the distance, lights dancing on the water like fragments of memory. I reached into my clutch and took out the letter. The paper was soft, fragile, like it knew it had done enough damage. I read the last line again. If you ever find this, know that I loved you the only way I knew how, imperfectly, selfishly, completely. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Then the wind took the letter from my hand, and I didn't try to stop it. It drifted into the river, spinning slowly until it vanished beneath the current. Just like him. Just like the life we built on half-truths and charm. When I returned to the car, the driver glanced at me in the mirror. "Home, madam?" I smiled faintly. "No. Drive to the city. There's nothing left here but furniture and ghosts." We drove in silence. The road stretched ahead, endless and quiet, lined with trees that looked like sentinels keeping secrets. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt light. Not happy. Happiness is too fragile, but weightless. Freedom doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it feels like nothing. And maybe that's the point. 3 months later, I barely recognize the woman staring back at me in the mirror. She wears white now, not for innocence, that's long gone, but because white absorbs every color and reflects none. It's what purity looks like after it stops apologizing. My apartment overlooks Central Park. It's quiet in the mornings, except for the hum of distant traffic and the soft sound of birds that haven't learned the concept of guilt. I drink my coffee black, the way truth tastes when you stop sweetening it for others. The news talks about the Langley estate every day. Auctioneers fighting over artwork, lawyers circling like vultures, headlines dripping with words like legacy, betrayal, empire. None of it feels like mine anymore. That version of Eleanor Langley died the night of the dinner, and I buried her in silence. I still receive letters, apologies wrapped in legal language, pleas disguised as updates. Charles wants closure. Victoria wants reconciliation. Daniel wants nothing except peace, and that's the only one I reply to. He writes from California now. He's working at a small coastal charity, teaching underprivileged kids about finance. Irony turned into redemption. He signs every letter with, "I'm learning to be good," and for that alone, I keep him in my prayers, the kind whispered, not written. Some nights, when the city glows below my window, I think about the house, the marble floors, the golden light, the laughter that sounded more like judgment. I wonder if the walls remember the truth we carved into them, if ghosts ever get tired of haunting the wrong people. Then I pour another glass of wine and remind myself that remembering is a luxury I no longer owe anyone. People ask how I can live alone now, as if solitude is a punishment, as if noise is proof of worth. But the truth is, I've never felt more surrounded by stillness, by dignity, by choice. My silence used to be forced. Now it's curated. It's a difference between prison and peace. One evening, I received a visitor. The concierge called up to say a young woman was waiting in the lobby. When I went down, I saw her. Maria, the housekeeper's daughter I'd given everything to. She held a small box in her hands. Her voice was soft, respectful. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "I've reopened the bakery in your name. We call it Eleanor's Table." For a moment I couldn't speak. A bakery. Something small, simple, real. After all the marble and wine and stock certificates, it felt like a confession to the universe. "Do you like it?" she asked shyly. I smiled. A real smile, the kind that doesn't hide sharp edges. "Yes," I said. "It's the only empire worth keeping." Dietro. When she left, I opened the box she'd brought. Inside was a loaf of bread, warm, crusted, fragrant, the same kind I used to bake before the world decided to destroy me for it. I tore a piece off, tasted it. It was imperfect, uneven, but it tasted like something I hadn't known in years. Home. In Ibi town. Later that night, I sat at the window, watching the city lights flicker like confessions, trying to stay quiet. I thought of my husband, his letter, his regrets, his half-hearted love. I thought of the children who mistook privilege for virtue. And I thought of myself, the woman who had once been soft enough to be broken and sharp enough to rebuild from the shards. People will tell stories about me now. They'll call me cold, ruthless, ungrateful. They'll say I destroyed a dynasty out of pride. Let them. Because none of them were there the night I sat alone at a table built on betrayal and chose to stop being a meal for other people's appetites. Power doesn't roar. It whispers. It says, "I owe you nothing anymore." The clock on the wall ticks softly, a reminder that time moves whether forgiveness does or not. I raise my glass, not to revenge, not to survival, but to quiet, to the kind of peace that doesn't need witnesses. Outside, the city hums. Inside, I breathe. For the first time in 10 years, I am not waiting for anyone to understand me. I am not proving, defending, or pretending. I am simply Eleanor Langley, and that finally is enough.